All right, welcome back. Man, I tell you what, there are some times when we open up and we talk about stories and we talk about the narratives that we're crafting and man, I get excited to hear this. So hopefully those that are listening also get excited because I sometimes have this intense feeling that we're going to have something really, really good coming. Trunnis is now on with us. Trunnis, thanks for coming in and being able to start to share some of your story. I know that typically our life stories are going to have to be compacted, and I'm going to warn everybody, we may go really fast and we may cover a lot of topics, so you might want to buckle up here. Maybe have to hit the rewind a couple of different times because I know this is going to be one of the best ones that we've had. We've had some good ones, but man, I'm excited about this one. So thank you. Thank you for showing up here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you very much for having me, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's the first thing, and we always start with this, and I actually kind of like this because it kind of is a little bit of a challenge, not only for me but for those that come on. Is you got 30 seconds? We meet in an elevator. Who is Trunnis? Who are you?
Well, first thing I have to say is I'm a Buffalonian, and I'm very proud to be a Buffalonian. Born and raised there. I do not live there right now, but that's the first thing I always tell everybody. I'm from Buffalo. Whenever I see somebody from Buffalo, I'm always like, I will seriously. I see a lot of them, and I always address myself. Second thing is I'm definitely I'm a father. I'm very proud of all of my children. And I'm also a grandfather, and I am raising one of my grandchildren right now, and that is the core of me is my family.
That's incredible. Yeah, and I love that. And I mean, we could probably talk about. But I lived right outside of Buffalo for a while, in Webster, Rochester area, so I'm pretty familiar with that area. In fact, I got stuck on a snowstorm one time in Buffalo. There's a lot of
Everybody
that.
has gotten stuck. Absolutely. That's where half our population comes from, getting stuck. Yeah.
That's so true. That's so true. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this. The narrative that you believed when you were growing up, that you thought, hey, this is what life was going to be like. And, uh, like I said, I've done a little bit of research and looked at some of the storyline, but I really want to get it from you. What were the things that were most impactful that led you to believe that you were going to act and be this type of an adult? And we say this all the time, but sometimes it's an experience, sometimes it's somebody, an example, sometimes it's somebody that just looked at you and said, "You will live this way." What was that like for you growing up?
Well, I was born. My father's name is Trunnis. I'm Trunnis Goggins II. My father was a an entrepreneur. He owned skating rinks. He owned bars. He owned uh, bowling alleys. He owned a whole bunch of different things back in the day. Born and raised in Buffalo, and literally, my father told me that I was going to be the next Trunnis. And growing up in Buffalo, I lived in a, well, this is what would your father do
Hmm.
type. I lived in a shadow. And I don't mean to say it in a bad way. I don't, feel sorry for me, something like that. But I lived in a way where this is what your life is going to be. It's already been predestined. The funny thing it led to a long period. I would say probably a 10-year period of just drifting because I rebelled against that. I did not want to live like that.
Hmm.
I wanted to go out and see. I mean, I knew that there were, here I am saying, I just started out saying I'm a proud Buffalonian, but I knew that there was something else out there. I just didn't know what the hell was out there. That was the thing. And as a result, I said, well, I'm going to do this now. I'm going to do that now. I'm going to do, I'm going to do this. Thing is I grew up in a, like I said, my dad owned skating rinks and bars, and I lived in a pretty much of a party atmosphere. And, even though I rebelled against so many other things about what was going on, the fact of the wine, women, and song was not something that I rebelled against. As a matter of fact, I embraced that, and I paid for it dearly. But like I said, what I thought my life was going to be, I was afraid of it, and I actually rejected it.
So can you? I think a lot of people do this, and I don't think that it's a negative thing. Well, it turns out to be negative, but I don't think our parents intend it to be negative. Our parents look at us and say, I want you to become more than I am. And so they put a lot of
Mm-hmm.
pressure. They put a lot of challenges in our way to be able to become more. But sometimes, like you just said, he said, you're going to be the next. And you were like, I don't want that title. I don't really want to embrace that title. So for those that have that, what was going through your mind originally when he said you are going to be the next, and yet your mind was saying no, I don't. Like how did you try to balance that other than the rebelling aspect of it? Like what was going on emotionally? How did that impact your self confidence and your value of who you were?
Well, it almost takes away goals. It takes away next steps. So where, the average kid, in high school or in middle school, all right, I am going to do the following things. I'm going to finish school. I'm going to start applying to colleges when I'm a sophomore, junior, whatever, and then I'm going to go on and then I'm going to do whatever. That wasn't what I was supposed. That's not what I was there to do. So there was a point where I was looking at other kids, my peers, and I was actually kind of jealous that, hey, I'm going to Cornell, or I'm going to Ithaca, I'm going to, Michigan, whatever. And then I'm sitting there going, well, I am doing the same thing that I'm going to be doing now. I'm going to go to the same building. I'm going to do the same things. I'm going to do this and the other. And again, like I said, this is not for you to be honest with you. There was it was a if someone said, hey, I'm going to give you a very successful business that produced, Rolls Royces, Mercedes Benz, six, seven, and then I'm talking 1980 dollars, six, $700,000 homes. Here's what you're going to have, you would embrace that. But when you were talking, that you got stuck when you lived in Webster. That's the same thing that happened. I felt, oh wow, this is just it, and I see all these other people experiencing other things, and I'm not going to experience that. And as a result, it was a weird feeling.
So was that a life in the rebel aspect of it? Was it a compromise? Let me put it this way: in a compromise of the aspect that I will stay here, but I'm not going to do this. So I
No,
will do.
no.
What? How did that work out then?
It wasn't a compromise at all. It was like, I am not going to stay here. I'm going to go out there unplanned. I have no idea what's going to happen to me, and I am going to do nothing but do damage to myself. That's
Wow.
exactly what it was. It was not a compromise at all. It was an utter, some people rebel just to rebel.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And there is no reason for the rebellion. You're just going to do it. I read a book about the two different revolutions. You had the American Revolution, you had the French Revolution, and the American Revolution. Okay, we're going to do this. This is our revolution. This is our rebellion. And once we do this, we're going to establish this kind of government. We're going to do it this way. And then you had, and it was in, yes, a lot of people died. I understand that, but it was a very orderly revolution. And when the revolution was over, that sense of order was eventually established.
Established.
Then you had the French Revolution. It's like, dude, I hate the queen, I hate the king, I'm going to cut their heads off, and whatever happens, happens. Well, when we talk about rebellion, and I mean, even to this day, if you look at it, the growth of France and the growth of the United States, look at the difference, and I'm not saying, I'm talking about at those times, not modern times.
Understood.
And
Yeah.
if you look at it, that's exactly what happened to me. I did not have my rebellion was not a American rebellion. Like, okay, listen, I'm going to do this. I am going to go and I am going to rebel, but I'm going to start going to college and I'm going to do this. I did go to college, but I was kicked out because literally I had a .08. I mean, I really, and the funny thing, I joke about it to my students. And I'm a college professor now, but I joke about it to my students now because I actually had a .08 grade point average. And the reason why I got out of school is because I probably drank over a .08, maybe 3 or 4 times a night. Okay. So it was an absolute total. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. It's not going to be, there's no plan to it. And whatever happens, happens.
Well, and I love that explanation because I think so often we think of rebellion just as a whole. There's actually a positive aspect of it where we rebel and work towards something, but yet there's that negative aspect, what you just talked about, of the rebellion and leave everything to the wind. Like we just have no purpose, no focus, no direction. There's nothing there, and it's important to really see that and understand that difference. So, kind of as we're looking at that, what, like you said, it was very. I'm going to use the word toxic. It was very toxic, that lifestyle
Mm-hmm.
that you were using or doing. What shook you up? What was the shift? What was the change? What kind of woke you up and said, okay, I can't continue to live this way?
It was actually December 24th, 1995. My first wife gave birth to my son, who I figured if I'm going to get stuck with it, you are too. And his name is Trunnis as well. so, and and so and he was born in California. I remember holding him in my arms the first time. So he comes out, they clean him up, and they do all that stuff, and um, I remember holding him in my arms for the first time. And when I held him, you know, I looked at him, he looked up at me, and I looked at him, and I said, oh my gosh, this person is relying on me to feed him. What am I going to do? And that moment was a moment of fear. And it was a moment of, you know what, you're going to have to put it all in one sock, man. You're going to have to get it together. And it was that moment right there.
Hmm. There obviously had to be additional actions and changes, but that initial impact changed the mindset.
Mm-hmm.
What other things did you discover as you embraced that fear and embraced that aspect of responsibility?
A couple things. Number one, I had no plan. Okay, I had no plan at all. I had no financial plan. I had no career plan. I had nothing. I had a job. I was working, but I had no plan. In other words, where are you going to be? I didn't have a savings plan. I didn't have anything. So what I had to start doing then is I had to start sitting there and really doing some self reflection to see, who am I? Because I didn't know. I never asked myself who I am, who I was. I didn't ask myself what I wanted. I didn't ask myself anything like that. And I didn't know. And then I come to realize, but it's funny because I came to realize at that point that, there is a lot there's a lot of entrepreneur in me. But then I realized that I did so many things to destroy myself in so many different ways that I had to get another start.
Hmm.
And so I had to do things. I mean, I did end up going back. I was living in California. I actually moved to Indiana. I was in the military. I did things and I'm going to tell you the best thing that ever happened to me in my entire life. It actually I met the people that I needed to meet, and it also stabilized me, and it gave me a thought process on how to stay focused on goals. And that was when I was in the United States Navy. That was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Hmm.
Was when I joined the Navy. Yes, I'm very proud of this country, and I'm very glad to have served this country. Don't get me wrong. But one of the things that it did was it actually brought about a mission. And it brought about, and I know everybody says, oh, it's so corny, why do you start your day saying the Sailor's Creed? I don't do that anymore, but I'm just saying, you start the day saying, no, I don't even remember it, to be honest with you. I know it's like, I am a United States sailor, and then after that, I know at the end it's honor, courage, and commitment. Everything in the middle, I have no idea. But the thing is we did that every day because we needed to know who we were. And even to this day, I get up and I say, okay, what am I doing? Who am I? What is my mission? And it actually started that process of mission accomplishment, goal accomplishment, purpose, and identity. And it was very much needed at that time. And it's helped now. I have a son now. His name is Nicholas. He is getting ready to join the Navy, and I'm very proud of him. And even though it's not that far, he's not that far in. He's 19, or he'll be 19. He is at the point in his life right now where he's trying to find himself. And then he came to me and said, "Yeah, I think I'm going to join the Navy." And I was extremely proud when he said that, and I'm really looking forward to it. But it was things like that. It was, number one, is establishing again an identity, who I am. You talked about the 30-minute speech before, and that's been the constant. Is that 30 minutes? That is the fact that I am a father. I am a very good father, but I lived in a household, and I'm not sitting there saying, well, everybody's like, well, when you're a kid, you're going to blame. I'm not blaming my mother and father at all, but they didn't stay together. They did not stay together, and they did not. I mean, I would say, as far as relationship status is concerned, it was not a good one, and as a result, not only did I, but even other siblings of mine, we experienced very bad relationships. So I will say I'm a very good father. I'm a very good grandfather. I will say that I will probably agree with my ex-wives that I am a horrible husband, and it's not for the fact that I'm out gallivanting. It's just that I'm just not good at it.
Mm.
So yeah.
I want to go back to something, because I think you brought up a point that is absolutely critical in all of our stories, in all of the narratives that we write. And I'll ask it to you this way, and then you can expand on however you like. How important is it that we ask ourselves those questions? And you started out by saying, I had no plan. I had no idea of where I was going to go. I had no say. You had all of these things I didn't have. But then you kind of transitioned and you said, I hadn't asked myself anything. And so therefore, my conclusion is, if I didn't ask myself anything, obviously I don't have any plans. So how important are those questions in your life and in making that transition?
You have to love yourself. And I found this out with my kids. I love my kids. And I'm going to go back a little bit. My dad, some friends came over to the house one time, and it was around Halloween, and they had gone out and they had toilet papered someone's house. You throw the toilet paper up and it's all over the place. And my dad's just laughing up a storm. I mean, he is laughing about this thing, and at the end of it, I'm like, I said, Dad, if I did that, because you would ground me, you'd get in my case. And my father responded with something. He goes, I love you. Because I love you, I have to hold you accountable. And because I love you, I'm holding you accountable. And I do not want you getting in trouble. And that would have got those kids in trouble. If those kids got in trouble, I wouldn't have cared. But if you gotten in trouble, it would have been a different story. And so as I grew up, I realized that, some of the things that I laughed at with other kids, I wouldn't laugh at if my kids did it. And it goes back to even asking myself questions. When you do not ask yourself questions, you're not holding yourself accountable. And that's the number one thing. If you truly love yourself, and if you truly want to be successful, and if you truly want to live with purpose, and if you want other people, I'm not saying other people to love you. You can't make other people love you, but you can make other people respect you, all right, and understand and recognize your boundaries. And the only way you can do that is if you hold yourself accountable first and you draw those boundaries. And those boundaries are not only for other people outside, those boundaries are for yourself.
Yeah.
And that's when you don't ask yourself questions. When I didn't ask myself questions, if I'm not, like, for example, if my I have my 9-year-old grandson, walks outside, the first thing we're going to ask when he walks out that front door is, where are you going? Okay. Now, if he's going in the backyard, I'm good with that. If he says I'm going to cross the street, no, we got to talk. I got to hold you accountable. Okay. And sometimes you have to look at yourself, and I teach inmates, and I say, what I need you to do is every single morning and every single night, I need you to look in the mirror, and I want you to ask yourself, I want you to look yourself right in the eye. And I need you to ask yourself, have you done everything that you're supposed to do? Have you done everything you could do to make your life better? On this day, whatever it is. And you have to look yourself in the eye. You have to look yourself in the mirror. The thing is you know what? If you can lie to yourself if you're not looking at yourself. But once you look yourself dead in the eye, you can't lie, because you know what? Somebody, either one part of that reflection or yourself, is going to realize that you're lying. Okay. And at that point, then you got to fess up, and you got to hold yourself accountable. And what I wasn't doing is I wasn't asking myself questions. I wasn't asking, hey, where are you going? I was just going, and I had nothing to hold me accountable. And the number one person, once you get a certain age, the number one person to hold you accountable is definitely yourself.
Yeah, and I love that, especially because everything that we talk about is, how do we break some of the false narratives that we grew up in, and then how do we craft and how do we create the true narratives as far as the way that we want to leave, the legacy, the things that we want to be known for. And we have never talked about it on this podcast at all until right now, where it's like, you have to ask yourself the questions, and some of the hard questions of, what you just said. I mean, I don't want to go back through it because it was so eloquently put by you, but it does. It all starts with those questions. And I love that concept. I love that idea of being able to say, okay, how am I going to, one, love myself, and then ask myself the hard questions, and then two or three, sorry, the third thing is just make sure that I'm not lying to myself by holding everything accountable. And those are just, that concept right there is almost enough just to be able to help begin the process to shift yourself out of the false narrative into the true narrative, into the way that you want to live your life. And so let's jump into that. What do you do now? What are the principles? What are the values you live by? What are the daily actions? You said that you do some meditation, or not meditation, but you talk to yourself, you ask yourself questions. What are the things that you do now to craft and create the narrative of your life moving forward?
First thing, what I do is I make sure that, and it's funny that I write a list every day of things that I'm going to do. All right. I write a contract with myself every single day. And once I write it down, I have to do it. And if I don't do it, I put a little asterisk by it, and it makes me, okay, well, I got to do this tomorrow. I have to do this tomorrow. Everything that I have in life, I work out I work out 5 days a week for sure. And then I play hockey and things like that. That's my 6th day or 7th or maybe even 9th day, because I play hockey as much as I can. But I do workouts, and I write it down. I write down, okay, how much did I weigh this morning when I started, and things like that. Those are things I do. The other thing I do is I take a whole person approach to life. You know, I'm talking about what I do for myself, but I always want to make sure that, am I meeting the needs of my family? My children, I have a one that lives in Kentucky. Most of them live in Indiana. And then, like I said, my grandson lives here with me in North Carolina. I want to be there for them. I want to make sure that I am there for them in every single way, shape, or and form. My father was a phenomenal provider, but one thing that he did not do was, and he comes from, I mean, what he came from the old school type of, I mean, the real old school. I mean, he was born in 34, type of
That
being
makes you
raised.
21 ish, somewhere in that ballpark.
No, I'm actually, I am very proud of my age. I'm 52. I'll be 53 in February. And I always tell people I'm very proud because I love going on the ice and playing hockey. And I know I'm going off on a tangent. One time I was playing hockey about 2 years ago, and I told the guy how old I was. I said, I'm 50 years old. And the guy goes, wow, my dad's not even 50. I said, you are getting hit before the end of the day. Because I told him how long I played. He's like, "Oh my gosh, my dad hasn't even been live that long." I said, "Okay, that's fine." But anyway, going back. But I mean, I want to make sure that I'm there for my children.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that I'm there for people. I want to make sure that I'm contributing. We're not here. I mean, I'm talking about age. If I'm looking at it, I mean, I've got what, and I'm not trying to sound morbid. I have 30 years left. I want to leave a good mark. I want to leave something behind where people are they said, well, I learned this from this man who's now long gone, and those are the things I do to make sure that, like I
That's
said,
part of the
and it,
story of your life. That's what you
mhm,
want to leave behind. That's part of that story. So I don't think that it's
absolutely.
off track. I don't think that it's something that's too far off of the main trail aspect of it. But having purpose, asking yourself the questions, and writing the contract. I mean, I think some of those that I listen to, some of the people that I've talked to, sometimes they look at that and they're like, "Dude, there's no way." What would be maybe the first steps? What would be the beginning of that path? In other words, I know that there's people listening that say, well, dude, I'm not going to write a contract for myself every day. That's too much for me to think about. That's way too deep for me to even go down. What would be some of the first things that you started out to do to be able to begin this path of where you're at, where you're working out every day of the week, basically, and you're still playing hockey? Because some people are looking like, look, I've already messed up. I'm now 40, 45. I already messed up this
Mhm.
far. What are the next steps? What's one little thing? What's something that they can take?
One little thing is like, okay, so let's go back to somebody who's 40 years old and says, I've already messed up. What can I do now? The thing is you have now, which is something that is a good, where do you, okay, so you have now, we're planning that you're going to have the future. All right. Now the future could be 10 years, could be 50 years, could be whatever. But what you need to do is you need to say, where do I see myself? And I know this is you hear this in job interviews all the time. And when where do you see yourself in 5 years? And I really do think that people need to say, if you think you've messed up and you're tired of living in your messed up, then what are you going to do? Are you going to sit there and accept the messed up, or you're not? Well, if you decide that you're not going to accept the messed up, you need to sit there and say, okay, what did I do that got me messed up? And I have to stop doing that. All right, that's what I'm going to stop doing that now. So if you're trying to make a 180-degree turn, you're going to have to do the direct opposite. And what I mean by contract with myself, I mean I write lists and I hold myself to those lists. And that's what I mean. I don't sit there and say, and whereas, and this, that, and the other, and here to, Trunnis Goggins here to referred to as Guy, but no, I don't do anything like that. But what I do is I write these things down. I look at it. The best thing for someone to do is if you need to take pictures, you need to have a collage. You need to sit there and put things up. Like, for example, there's a couple things. I'll sit there and I'm watching TV. There's a couple things I'll sit and as I'm watching TV, I'm a Buffalo Sabres fan and they are awful right now. So
it's not much different than a Michigan Detroit Lion, because that's where we're at.
Exactly. So as I have the game on, I have the game on just because I'm loyal to them, but I'm usually not watching. And so I'm scrolling through my phone, and there's a couple things that I look at. There's two things that I want. All right. I want a brand new Nissan Z. Okay. And if Nissan's listening, I hope you sponsor Mr. Kroll's podcast, and you can sponsor mine as well. But I want a brand new Nissan Z, and then I want a 45-foot Hatteras boat. Those are two things I want. And what I do is I look at those. I scroll through, I look, I sit there and say, this is the one I'm going to get. This is what I'm going to do. And as I'm sitting there thinking about it, I do know that one day I'm going to get them. Why? Because not only am I just looking at it and dreaming, but I put that in front of me like, okay, when am I going to be able to get that? Okay. And how am I going to take the steps to do it? So that the things that I'm doing right now is to be able to get those two items. I'm not asking for a lot, but that new Z, it's $60,000, right? But I want it. All right. And I'm going to get it. Why? Because when I was a kid, going back to when I was a kid, I had a Nissan 200 SX. And I really wanted the 300ZX, but insurance and cost is not going to help me on that. So I had to settle for the Walmart version of the Z. And I was happy about it. So now I really do want that. And so I scroll through those things. And it's almost like, okay, I am giving myself a promise. All right. So when am I going to get this car? When am I going to get this boat? And those are things that I do. So when I say write contracts with yourself, it's like, where do you see yourself? Mm. As far as houses, as far as like, I'm building a studio downstairs in my basement right now. And you're looking at it right now. I know no one can see it, but this is the start of the studio. This is not the final studio. This is just the beginning. This is just the stages. And again, like I said, this is not the final plan, but this is the start of the plan. This is a step. And if you don't want to be wherever you are, so I'm sitting there talking about people who are messed up, people who are in a bad marriage, you know what? And you're going to have to get uncomfortable. A lot of people are in bad marriages. A lot of people are at bad jobs. And the thing is they are too comfortable in their badness to get out of it. Well, if you're miserable and you feel like you want to get hit by a Greyhound bus every morning when you get up, you're going to have to get a little bit more miserable in order to be comfortable. And it's like, like even with this studio, I mean, I have to go downstairs and I have to fix it. I have to put the floor down. I have to do this stuff. Man, I could be sitting there watching TV or doing whatever, but no, I have to go out and do it. I have to reroute this. I have to and that's the thing. And even when you want to get, when you want to move on and you want to get better, you're going to have to say, yeah, I messed up. And you might be mad at yourself because now you have to take an extra step, but you still have to go that way.
Yeah. Yeah. We're winding down on our time, and I hear this stuff coming through, but you wrote a book called The 4 Ps. And part of what you've just said about the planning, can you just give me like a minute or 2 minutes on just the purpose of the book and how that incorporates into things that you're living out?
Yes. And the idea from the book, I talked about, I teach inmates. idea of the book is I teach, I was teaching these inmates. I was in a class one time. I had 15 people. These people were in prison anywhere from 5 years to 20 years. So you've had up to 20 years to think about what you're going to do with your life. You had up to 20 years to think about what you want out of life. And so the first thing I asked these inmates, I said, what do you want? And it was dead silent. Dead silent. They were all looking at each other. I was like, dude, and I did. I said, you had 20 years to think about this. I looked at this one guy and I said, you don't know? Well, I just want to, I said, you know what? If you don't know what you want, when you get out from behind these bars, you're still going to be in prison. So the book came out, but the funny thing is when we leave and we see people who have never been locked up, I can ask them the same thing, and they're like,
Yep.
If I look at somebody and say, what is your purpose? Why are you here? Well, I'm just here to, I'm here to feed my family, no, it's not that. We're only going to be here for a certain, marked amount of time. When we leave, let's have some fun. Let's do what we wanted to do. Let's do things intentionally. Now, we have to do things intentionally for us. When I was telling you about in the very beginning, when I got rebellious, it was because I didn't have a passion to do what my father did. I admire what my father did as I get older. I'm like, man, that is phenomenal. But I didn't have a passion to do what he did. And to this day, you'll never see me in a nightclub just because I don't want to go. But so, and so those are the things that I mean, you have to have a passion. You have to have, and then you have to realize that whatever you want to go through, you're going to have to go through some muck. And that's where the persistence comes in. Mm. But I don't care what you do. If you do not have a plan, you're going to be like that feather in Forrest Gump. You're just going to be floating around, and hopefully you land by the right feet. But if you don't, that's going to be it. So that was the inspiration behind the book. And as a result, I've gone out, I've done some speaking engagements. This is a book that if you are an entrepreneur, get the book. If you are somebody who is going through a life change, get the book. If you are somebody who's in college, who's like, okay, I'm going to college because I was supposed to go to college and I don't know what I'm going to do next, get the book. And it's gonna at least, I'm not telling you how to live your life. I'm just telling you how to design your life. This is actually a book. This is actually a book of design.
Well, and that's the reason why I wanted you to say something about it, because it fits so perfect with our mission and our purpose here at Narrative. We want people to be able to write and craft the story of their lives. And oftentimes the question comes back, how do I actually get started? I'm fed up. I'm tired of everything else that's been going on. And this is a great piece of part of that is making sure that you have a plan to be able to, and you have, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's purpose, plan, persistence, and passion. Am I right?
That is right. Mm-hmm.
So you find purpose, you have a plan, you are persistent at it, and you're passionate about it. And that's how we craft our narrative. That's how we live the lives that we want to have a legacy that's going to be able to leave something behind that people remember us by and recognize us. So, all right, we're winding it down. What is the one thing that you want somebody to walk away with? All of the good stuff that you had, asking questions and about the 4 Ps and then all of the different, what is the one thing? What's the one thing you want somebody to take away?
When you are doing whatever you're doing in life, make sure you're doing it for you. Mm. If you're not doing it for you, you're going to be miserable. Make sure you're doing it for you. I had and this is in the book, and I still want you to buy the book, but I'm going to share one story out of the book. All right. And there was I was teaching a class, and it was an intro class. It was one of those college orientation classes. And so what I usually do is I try to, because I know the first day of college is a horrible day. I remember the first day I went to college, I felt like the dumbest person in there. Right. And that's fine. But I would go around to everybody in the class and I'd say, what's your major and why is this your major? So I walked up to this woman and I said, hey, welcome to school. What's your major? And she goes, I'm going to be a nurse. Why do you want to be a nurse? My mom was a nurse. And then I go back to my childhood. I didn't share this with them. I said, why do you want to be a nurse? Well, my grandmother was a nurse. Again, I stopped and I said, again, I'm going to ask you one more time. Why do you want to be a nurse? This lady in the middle of the class, first day, and she came back, thank God. But she came back, in the middle of the class, she started crying. She goes, I really want to be a teacher. So I asked her 3 times, you want to be a nurse? Why do you want to be a nurse? Why do you want to be a nurse? And then she finally broke down and said, I want to be a teacher. And then I just told her, I said, then why are you going to nursing school? She actually did change her major. She is a teacher, and she's a fantastic teacher. She's an elementary school teacher. I think I'd rather be a nurse. But anyway, she is a fantastic teacher because she's doing what she wanted to do. And a lot of times when we go out in life, why, like, for example, I said I want a Nissan Z. All right. I don't know how much money I'm going to make from what I'm doing right now. I really don't. I hope I make a lot, and I hope I make wise decisions. But I'm not sitting there saying I want a Lamborghini. I don't. Why? A Lamborghini means you made it. I don't care. I know I made it. I'm not going to live, and we live. Sometimes we live to impress other people. And that does take away from our purpose. So what I want you to do is, when you read this book, I don't want you to be selfish, but I want you to do it because you want to do it. If you're doing something because other people want you to do it, eventually that passion is gone. And you may be very good at what you do, but if you're doing it for other people, that passion's gone. Or if that other person leaves or is not important to you anymore, now you're way deep. And we're going back, that 40-year-old guy you said is like, man, it's too late for me now. And that's where I want you. That's what I want people reading my book. Yeah. And I want everybody, to be honest with you, to avoid.
Yeah, that combination of purpose and passion changes so much. It just changes so much. It gives you the persistence. So, all right, how can people get in contact with you? Where can they find you? What's the best way to send you a message, whichever?
You can actually get me 2 ways. You can actually go on the 4Ps podcast website. We have a 4Ps podcast website. You can listen to all the
we'll put a link in the notes too.
Yes. And also, we are now developing. It is still under construction. It will be up next week. It's the Goggins.com, Trunnis Goggins II.com website. And that will have book information and other speaking engagements and things like that.
Yeah, so we'll definitely have that. It will be live by the time this is being aired. So we'll definitely have that in the notes, and you'll be able to go directly there. It will be available at that point in time. So, yeah, we're looking forward to that. Man, Trunnis, again, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
This has been truly – it went a completely different way than I thought it was, which I love that. I absolutely love where it goes. And it's so much fun. But I want to say this, and I say it every time. For those that are listening – if something was said that impacted you, that changed your life, that inspired you to do something more, our heart is, whether you follow us, do anything else, the only thing we really, really want is to have you just reply back, send a message and say, hey, this is the change I made. Because that is where we find a lot of the fulfillment. We find a lot of the pieces and the parts of why we go forward. And what Trunnis was saying is part of the purpose that we have is to really have an impact. And so if something did that, whether you text me, email me, whatever way you end up doing that, I'd love to hear from you. I know Trunnis is probably the same way, same heart. So just reach out and let us know that you heard, that you're listening, and that there was some kind of an impact. So until next time, keep listening. Make sure you do subscribe. I do want you to do that. Take a look at Trunnis's website. Make sure you guys follow along and keep crafting and writing that story of your life.
Thank you.